I feel that intimacy is one of those topics, one of those things that is hard to address because it requires a lot of vulnerability. It just
Yeah.
we don't want to be judged or dismissed by your partner because it's so intimate that
Yeah.
it's like if you're a woman then and then you feel that you're not having enough sex, then you feel unattractive or you feel fat or you feel older, you feel all these crazy stories that run in your head. And if you're a man, then you feel that basically your wife it doesn't love you anymore or
Yes.
any of these crazy stories. And as I mentioned to you off cameras or a few days ago, this quote from Neil Strauss. He said that unspoken expectations are premeditated resentments, and I think that many of these issues come from the fact that we are not saying what we need or what we want. Sure, we can say, "Hey, can you help me with the trash?" or "Can you help me with the dishes?" or "Can you help me with the kids?" But we don't express much of our needs when it comes to intimacy, and then we start expecting the other person to just know. And when the person doesn't know, then we start resenting them.
Exactly. Well, tell your audience I love having these conversations. So I think it's an area, again, I wish we'd been taught this in school, myself in particular, that it's okay to talk about this, right? We are humans. We wouldn't exist without sex. Like this is as as universal as you can get. There are very few things as universal as sexual desire. I mean, it's right there. Physical touch is, of course, one of the most common love languages. It's how we give and receive and understand love. And it doesn't just have to be sex, but intimacy, physical intimacy. And it's heartbreaking to me how many couples, again, going back to the cultural stuff, the implications, the generational stuff, don't or feel that they can't talk about it. And then that thing about fact versus assumption, gosh, this is one of the biggest areas. I see it all the time. And you're exactly right. We're often, again, not trying to make it about gender lines, but often women do feel they're not physically attracted to me. I'm not beautiful enough. I gained some weight. There's somebody else. I must be having an affair. And men often feel, right? Parentified happens a lot. Often there's a thing where, one person makes the other person feel like they're doing everything and ordering them around, and they fall into a dynamic that feels more like parent child, and that can be very emasculating if it's happening towards the man. So all of those things where it becomes more and more pulled apart and difficult to talk about. So that, one of the tips I'd say is don't assume, because there's a very, very more likely than not, it has nothing to do with any of those things where your head is jumping. It's not about the attraction not being there. It's not about trying to reject you. It's not about all the abandonment triggers that can come up when you feel rejected, which runs so deep and is so painful. Um, so often, again, you both want the same thing. You just don't know how to get there. And it is a tricky subject in the sense that I don't want anybody, married or not, to feel like they have to do something physically that they don't want to do. Of course. And at the same time, I do see so many couples where they're not having sex because of the busyness, because they don't know how to talk about it, because they don't know how to ask for what they need. And this is kind of piggybacking on the subject. I know it's a whole other thing, but non-traditional relationships, non-monogamous relationships, open relationships, what about all of that? Those are conversations I think that are important to have, ask for what you need. It doesn't mean the other person has to do it, but this is your partner. Let's have these conversations. And if it helps to have them in a safe space with another person, then do that. I love having those conversations. There's lots of wonderful sex therapists and coaches and intimacy coaches out there. And I think having these conversations with a safe third person can make it easier.
Yeah, asking is I, I struggle with that in general. Just asking for help, asking for anything. I'm just very self-reliant, independent, but then we cannot do that. And even in those easy things, if we struggle with that already, once we are in a relationship, once we are having intimacy problems or any other kind of problem, if we don't ask, we're just not
Yeah.
gonna get anywhere. I just wonder how, if somebody was having, I don't know, I don't know if intimacy problems would be the way, but then concerns or wasn't happy, or it's like, you know what, it could be better. How can they start even addressing, how would that conversation start, how, because here's the thing, we all think about, well, I'm trying to find the perfect timing. Well, there's no perfect timing, you either do it or you don't. But then but then we procrastinate because we are avoiding the emotion of the uncomfortable, of being vulnerable. It's like, okay, how do we just go and take action and start addressing something in a very delicate and subtle way of, hey, this is what's going on.
So here, I love that question, and I do have a suggestion for that. Um, and this is true of any vulnerable topic. You're right that there's no perfect timing. Don't do it late at night for reasons I already addressed.
Check. Okay.
Right? So find a specific time, schedule it, tell your partner, hey, I have something kind of vulnerable I'd like to share with you. Can you make it, put constraints on it, make it small. So block off maybe 20 or 30 minutes. Don't try to make this, if it goes longer, and that's fine. And have a concrete goal. Doesn't mean you hit that goal. But I think the reason so many people put this off is it feels so abstract, so hard to distill. It feels so big. So this is true of, let's say, finances. Often couples don't talk about finances because it feels so big. How do we sit down and have this conversation when we haven't had it in years to really understand what we're going to do here? When it's these heavy topics, have a goal and have it be a small goal. So maybe in that situation, the goal is, um, how would you feel about me initiating more? Or, I want to open up the conversation about bringing a third person in at some point, or I don't know, like whatever it is, but you don't have to resolve everything in that initial conversation. I would say the goal is pick one piece of the puzzle and have the goal be that I'm going to put it out there and tell you that I'm just opening the conversation, and maybe we, think about it. We can have a longer conversation this weekend or something like that. So keeping it manageable, that would be my suggestion.
What's up, everyone? If you enjoyed that, then press here to watch the full episode. And don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.